Got it.
All right. I wanted to show you a couple things that people have submitted for some assignments that we're going to talk about today as well. And I wanted to remind people about a couple things. Um, the biggest one is please remember uh, when you submit something and you don't like the grade, you can always resubmit it. A lot of people are doing that pretty well. Um, and I think it was, and I wanted to remind people as well that sometimes when you submit something, well, you just need to remember that on Canvas, if you submit something, like in addition to a previous submission, Canvas automatically overwrites the previous submission. And there's been a couple people where if it's a two-part assignment, they'll submit one part and I'll say, hey, this part is missing. They'll submit the second part, but the first part is gone now. And I am kind of a stinker about that just because the university system, Canvas will keep your complete submissions on until the system has to be redesigned. So, in 5, 10, 15 years or whatever. So it is important for a record to survive of your work that you submit everything, all the elements of the assignment at the same time. And if I am saying, well, something gets overwritten and you need to resubmit it, please try to resubmit everything, all the elements at the same time. And then that will keep a permanent record of your stuff online in the university system. All right, let me show you some of the stuff that we're going to go over with. First off, though, did everybody survive the weekend with all their fingers and toes intact?
Yes.
Good. I made my the family down here is not really excited about sushi, and so I thought I'd try something that was a little bit different. I made charcuterie sushi, where I use like prosciutto and turkey pastrami and roast beef and some ham, and I made sushi rolls with things like mozzarella and pickled onions, and I took some dill pickles and sliced them lengthwise and put that in. Did some stuff with some other things as well. I was really surprised because I thought, honestly, I'd be the only one eating it, but everybody seemed to enjoy it. So that was kind of fun. There were some kid meltdowns, but things weren't too bad. And we got to see some really nice fireworks. So that's always fun. How about you, Erica and Nicole? Did you guys have fun? Did you enjoy yourselves? Is everybody safe?
Yes.
What did you do? If it's illegal, you don't have to tell me.
Spend time with my sister.
Good. That's always nice. That's a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully. Let's see if we get it to work. There's a good chance. All right. Okay, so we looked last week, we talked about the crux of the Renaissance and we talked a little bit about studio dome construction. And I wanted to show you some of the stuff that people had done in our class with the domes that people have made. So this is one dome. And I thought I wanted to show you this because there were several different kinds of domes that were made. And I thought that was kind of a fun one. Some of this you're only seeing like the initial actually this is from last semester. So let me see if I can find some of the ones from this semester. I think we have like three that came in. So if you haven't done it yet, please try to get it done as soon as you can to get that turned in this week. So let me show you. Let's see. We had some really interesting ones that people had turned in. But I wanted to show you just, if you're at a stage where you're really don't know exactly what to do, I wanted to show you. So this person, what I like about this person made some notes, they figured it out, they did some drawings about, what kind of possible shapes they could do. They watched some of the videos that we had, and then this is the dome that they made. That turned out really pretty well. That was excellent. So that was one of the people from our class. And I just want to find another one. Okay, here's somebody else. They had done a lot of stuff on the internet looking at different things. They had come up with a couple of different ideas. And what I thought was interesting about this one is that they started doing one that was a geodesic style dome. And when it wasn't working out right, according to the directions that they'd been given online, they started doing their own thing. And I thought that was kind of cool to see. That was something that Brunelleschi had done when he was working on his dome. When it didn't work exactly the way that he expected, he kind of pivoted and redirected it. It did take a long time, but one of the reasons why things took so long at that time is just because the three different things factors at play. One was the available technology. And the further you go back in historical time, a lot of the times the technology becomes more rooted in redirection of human muscles. And so when we're talking about 500, 600 years ago, a lot of the times a crane, if somebody was going to move something heavy with a crane, it would either be direct force where you just have a pulley and pull on the rope, or it would be indirect force where you have multiple pulleys and the rope would go through multiple pulleys before you could pull it. But the weight limit was essentially how much the rope could hold. And if we're talking about taking bricks up, 100 feet in the air, you basically have to wait until the bricks that meet the weight limit on the rope get pulled up and pulled down by whoever the crew is that's moving them. And so, you do have to deal with time. But one of the things that I was really it was fun to see, people had some very interesting ideas about what kind of thing they wanted to do. So this is another geodesic dome style. Geodesic domes are domes that are made out of triangles. And you see that, like, if any of you have been to Disney World in Florida, there's the Epcot Center. And this structure, this was realized in the mind of somebody named Buckminster Fuller around 1920. So, and that's, I want to say, what, about a good 500 years after Brunelleschi's dome, maybe? Is that right? I think the math is right. But this kind of style of dome, what Brunelleschi did with those arches that met in the center, right here, is that a lot of the weight leaned in and ended up supporting the weight of the eight other sections. And you can see that here, right here, and the Buckminster Fuller Dome that several students have kind of gravitated towards. All the triangles are supporting each other, and triangle is inherently stable. And it is the only architectural structure that people have found so far that actually gets stronger the bigger it gets. And so, so it was kind of neat to see that several people in the class had done that. So I wanted to show you another dome. This is from another class again. And this person had done some interesting drawings, and you can kind of see one of the things that people had done were cutting the paper towards the center, leaving the center uncut, and then cutting slivers of paper out so that um, as they matched the paper's edges, that space the missing space would kind of drive it into a dome shape. And there were different things that people had done in those directions. So let me show you a couple more of these. And we're going to try to find another interesting. Oh, this one is a good one to share. So this was somebody else had started with the geodesic dome structure. I thought that was interesting too. And there's some issues that people had with building these, so they may not have looked as pretty as they wanted. But the point was to make something that was inherently stable that didn't have huge gaps in it. And so, regardless of whether or not you think it's pretty enough to submit, if it looks like this, there's no holes in it, and it can stand under itself, and it's the size is right, then you're doing pretty well. So I thought it would be good for everybody to see a couple of those different ones that people had turned in. So now that we're back from vacation, work on that if you can. Well, work on that this weekend, ideally. That'll be or this week, sorry, and try to get that done. We are coming down to the last month of the term, so do the best you can. If you need more time, just let me know. And what I've really appreciated about this class is that everybody that needs the time has been talking to me and letting me know, so I know what to expect. So thank you very much for that. All right. So I'm going to share. Does seeing what other people have done with the dome, has that helped you guys? Erica, Nicola, and Susan?
Yeah, that's very helpful.
All right, good. That's one of the issue. Well, one of the parameters of this assignment is to kind of find your way. And so that's why I'm saying don't do it with a kit or anything like that. And several people, I did provide a couple different resources, but several people have found their own, which is always fun to see. So very cool. I did give a person a 0 who had made a dome from a Lego set that they bought, and that's not going to do it. Just out of paper is great. All right, here we go. I'm going to share my screen again. So this was what we talked about last week. Today we're going to talk about Iran, and I want to start looking at Impressionism. So we're going to look at artwork in our World War II from Iran. I want to share with you some visuals of what people have done with the studio assignment. And then I want to move into Impressionism and talk a little bit about why that is as another significant difference. So we talked about the Renaissance, and what I was impressed with most of people when they did their um, written reflections and things like that, they weren't saying, well, the Renaissance is the first time that people were realistic and stuff like that, because it's not. We saw that naturalism, excuse me, was something that was really big in Western Africa. In the areas that were in the Ile specifically, you had bronzes that were naturalistic portraits of human beings with, a level of almost photorealism. And they did that 1,000 years before the bronzes of the Renaissance. And if you guys do your own research, look at uh, um, early European plaques, the wood and ivory carving. People would do photorealistic portrayals of human beings, um, maybe 1,000 years also before the Renaissance. And some of the things that really make the Renaissance stick out, though, is that because of the shift of what was important in the culture, namely and specifically the realm or the importance of the human form, that's why I think Renaissance artists worked so hard to make human forms look photorealistic. And then we also get the introduction of oils, linseed oil in particular, for painting, which extended drying time by a couple days. And then you could do a lot more shading, and that's why you get a very significant difference um, between this kind of stiff looking and this. I think those two things really, where first the importance was the element of education and the hierarchy of forms, so that people could tell what the narrative was without having to see a realistic person. And then you also are working with tempera, which dries in a couple hours, so you can't do a lot of blending and shading. And here you get people that are very focused on the importance of the human being, and you get oil paint, which takes days to dry, meaning that you can shade color quite a bit more. And so when I hear people talk about, oh, they could never do realism before, well, that's simply not true. We see that in a lot of instances. Anyway, moving on. So this is Italy. So we looked at Western Africa, we looked at China, Japan. And now we're going to Iran, which is very big in the news right now. I am I I do have some friends that I have not been able to get in contact with for a while who live in Iran. When I was there, they became family to me. And so it is with concern that I see things happening on the news uh, where they are put in danger by the government their own government, which is really sad for me. But I won't talk about that too much unless you really like to know about my trip in Iran. I have some photos that I wanted to share with you too, that of my time there. Uh, in 2017, if any of you have done research on stuff that I've done in the past, you see that I have done a lot of interfaith work and interfaith artwork uh, over the years. And about 20 years ago, I started doing a lot of Islamic style art, not doing stuff that I thought would look Muslim, but doing stuff that I thought showed respect. And let's see, I'll pull up some. Okay, so this is some of the artwork that I was doing, and these are just meditations on an Islamic tradition called the 99 Names of God. And I just making glass sculptures that I thought kind of reflected that. And I was trying as hard as I could to be respectful of another worldview. I did a lot of research, and a couple universities in Iran reached out to me and gave me a fellowship to study art and philosophy. The two universities were in Qom, Iran, and we went to Isfahan and Tehran and several other places. And these are just some photos that I took while I was there. And I studied everything from Islamic philosophy to several different kinds of art forms, lots of different kinds of stuff, geometry, different things like that. It was an absolutely astounding experience. Um, and the some of the people I met were what was so amazing to me is that these universities had their pulse on what was going on in the art world in Iran right there with the teachers and history and also current artists. And it was just really an extraordinary opportunity for me to visit with these people. At first, a lot of the people that we were talking to and working with thought I was just the token, you know, if you can imagine, I was the token DEI hire for the university because I was the only uh, white bread American boy at the university. But it was kind of fun when we would have conversations and they realized that I had read Ibn Attar and Ibn Arabi, and I knew these guys, and I had met and become friends with Dr. Syed Hussein Nasr, who started the Islamic University of Philosophy, or the Iranian University of Philosophy. And it was just kind of fun. And what I'm scrolling through is just showing you some of the culture, showing you some of the art. Absolutely beautiful stuff. There were a couple things that I wanted to point out. How many of you guys have heard that in Islamic art you can't show the human figure? How many of you have heard that? And since I'm looking at this, I can't see the hand waving. So if you've heard that, just say,
Oh,
uh, what's that?
I have I have not heard that before.
Okay, because that is something that actually a lot of art historians working in the U.S. will say that you cannot use that Muslims can't use the human form in art, and that is simply not true. This is right here. This is miniature paint. Oh, I'm sorry. This is miniature painting, which is a very Persian and Turkish style of art, but it's very Muslim, and you can see there's are very much human beings here. And this is in Iran, which it was taken over by the Ayatollah in 1979, and is they believe that they are a religious um, religiously directed government. So you'd think that if that's the case, and if the human form was against was not allowed in Islamic art, then these kinds of things would not be shown. So, yeah, and so Susan, the fact that you haven't heard that is really refreshing to me because, as you can see, there's a lot of human forms in Islamic art. Now, where it's not considered appropriate to have images of the Prophet, and it is not considered appropriate to have images of human forms in most worship spaces. But even that is not strictly adhered to worldwide. Um, as the two of the most amazing religious buildings in the Islamic world is the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, which is converted from, it was originally built by Constantine when he moved his Roman Empire, the center of the Roman Empire there in the fourth century. And that is a huge mosque now. I don't have an image of it, but that mosque, so you can see I have lots of photos. So if you guys want to look sometime, I'll share that with you. But that has, when it was converted from a Christian church into a mosque, there the mosaics that remain are of Mary and Mother Mary, baby Jesus, and Jesus's adopted dad Joseph, and that is in the one of the central worship spaces. Not nobody is facing it when they worship, or anything. They're not worshiping that. It is just one of the decorative panels that remains, and then the Kaaba that is in Saudi Arabia. So the Kaaba is right around here. The Kaaba is where Muslim world, everybody has to go there once in their lifetime. And if you can't make it once in your lifetime, then somebody can go in your stead. Like somebody can go for everybody in the community or for people that have passed away. And the Kaaba itself uh, has the Prophet Muhammad cleansed everything out of the Kaaba when he rededicated it, except for an image that was Mary holding the baby Jesus on her lap. So there are some things that I think that would surprise a lot of people. But this, if we look at this Iranian style art, you can see there's a lot of geometry and there's a lot of this. This is called arabesque or organic. It's kind of an abstract organic floral or vegetal motif. And you can see that these plant forms going around. I have lots of photos of more examples of that. But there's some really interesting things that happen in a religion that where the Prophet Muhammad did not want people to attach themselves to images of human beings. He felt that that was inappropriate to begin to display images of human beings within the worship space itself because he didn't want people to be confused as to what they were praying to. And who they should be praying to is the creator, Allah, which is Arabic for God. And when Jesus would pray in the New Testament, the word that he used was the Aramaic word that became Allah. And the word that Jesus used when he prayed was Eloi. That was the word that he used for God. So it's the same word, just the pronunciation has changed over about 400 or 500 years. And this is a map of the world that shows the darker green it is, the more intense the Islamic population of the countries. And you can see there are some really strong, high populations. And one thing that I think is really confusing to a lot of Westerners is Islam is not the equivalent of Catholicism. It's the equivalent of Christianity. Where does anybody want to guess how many Christian churches there are in North America or different Christian ways of viewing the world? The last I checked, which was several years ago, is that there were about 14,000 different Christian congregations in North America. And I'm not talking about congregations like, you get different congregations of Catholic communities. I think I want to say 14,000 different Christian churches where they believe their own thing that's slightly different than other Christians. And the same is true of the Islamic world. That, yeah, these are Muslim communities, but if we did the same map with Christian communities, then you would see an intense concentration in Europe and over here in South America. But they're not always all practicing the same Christian, the same brand or take on Christianity. So, there isn't a Muslim pope. And the extreme 12er Shiism practiced by the leadership of the IRGC or Islamic Revolutionary Guard, they is very different from the more expansive Islam practiced in, for example, this part of the world, Indonesia. It is going to be very different here. The Islam practiced in this part of the world is going to look different than the Islam practiced in some of these other areas of the world. So I also attended classes online in Wise University in Jordan, which is right here, and that Islam looks very different than Islam in Azerbaijan, for example, or Australia. And it's not because of anything other than different groups of people express their religion differently. What is intriguing to me about Islam in Iran is there is a very strong tradition of this kind of geometric and vegetal abstract art. And we'll talk about that in just a sec. But as you go through this module, this is an example of one of my experiences in Iran that I'd like you to read and see what you think about it. But my experience is very different than what social media and legacy media led me to expect. And we can talk about a couple different things. One thing that I want to get into is semiotics, and this is a great opportunity for us to talk about that. Um, have any of you heard that word semiotics before? It's Nicole or Erica. Have you heard that word?
I have not heard it.
Okay, semiotics is one of the words that I want you to remember and use at your earliest opportunity, because semiotics is one of those words. We'll talk about it, you'll know what it means, and it makes you sound incredibly smart when you use it. And I'll back into it by kind of an example of its application. Now, both of these are homes. Okay, this is very much a contemporary style, modernist, almost brutalist house. And this is something that was called a painted lady. It's an American Victorian style house. The reason it's called a painted lady is look at all this kind of detail work. And so a lot of the times these are going to be in bright colors too. Like, this is several shades of cream and yellow. And some of these, I lived for a while in Alabama, and this was a really popular house style. And people that kept it up, and they would uh, paint it with sometimes really bright colors. And that this kind of brutalist modernist style, it's something where it's supposed to be a more of a celebration of the um, simplified geometric forms. So very much blocks of cement, where gray is important because gray is the color of the cement that was used. So, the colors are very um, relatively toned down and plain. But is it easy for you to tell that these are both homes that people might live in? Or can you see that these could both be homes?
The one looks more like a commercial building, so
This one right
I
here
can
on the
see it now. Yeah, I can see it now more as a home, but at first glance, that's what I thought.
right. Yeah, and I can totally see that. It does look an awful lot um like office space. And there are some things when we look at something where we can decide that it might be a home. Some of the things that we look for is, okay, there's a front door. We can see a front door here, and I think the front door might be right here. I mean, that's something that we look for. Like, and we could tell that these are probably going to be bedrooms right here. I see maybe this is going to be a front room, like a living room kind of area. These are going to be bedrooms. Maybe this is a stairwell going up. On this one, the right-hand side, I want to say maybe this is the living area, and maybe these are bedrooms. What other kinds of things would you look for in a home? Um, I'm thinking maybe a kitchen, uh, maybe like a cloakroom or mudroom or an area where people come in and take their coats off. You have, like I said, the living room. If you're lucky enough to have a swimming pool, that's awesome. But in the house itself, there's going to be bathrooms. Typically, there's going to be a bathroom, like they're called a half bath, where it's basically a toilet and a sink where people that are just visiting for a couple hours can use. And then you may have like a master bath that is really duded up for the people that own the home, typically the parents in a family situation. And then you have maybe smaller bathrooms for the kids and stuff to use. But that's typically what we look for in a home. Well, that kind of breakdown is the application of semiotics. Semiotics is the contextual look for meaning when we're observing something like a living space, a living environment. Now, in this is something, this is called the Blue Mosque, and this is a worship space kind of thing. And worship spaces are a little bit different. When we look at worship spaces, uh, we look as Christians, we look for typically something where people will sit, maybe something like a podium or a rostrum or something, or where somebody will go up to preach. And then there's going to be an area where typically the Eucharist or its equivalent is going to be served to people. So we have these kinds of things in common. In a Christian one, there's going to be a central display that people look at to either remind them about the Christ or remind them of reverence, some sort of elements like this. The cross may not be present. And this is more Lutheran. There's going to be stained glass in the windows, but there's not going to be an awful lot of decoration around. This, when we go into like more of Greek Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, there's going to be some of the same similar things, but you're also going to have a lot of imagery of saints. And so these things, when we use the application of semiotics or contextualized meaning, this helps us to understand the worship space. And when we apply that to, so these both are Christian, they both share some similar things. They're also different. Like the Lutheran will not have a lot of imagery of saints, but because in a lot of Eastern or Greek Orthodox, the images of saints become windows into heaven, they need to be present in the church space, in the worship space. Now, for when we look at Islam, there are going to be some different things, but those differences come down to the differences of the purpose of the worship space and the worldview that's being expressed. This is one of the mosques in Iran, and there are some things that you see right away that are similar, and some things that you see that are different. One thing that's similar is that light is important. And in this case, it's carried by chandeliers and small windows. In this case, there's a lot of open lighting and bigger windows. And here, the light is in these windows up here. This is called a clear story, where it's usually a line of windows where the primary purpose is for the windows to let in light. And it's usually going to be smaller. By smaller, I mean under 25 to 30 square feet for each of the windows. That's what the clear story is. But some of the differences we see is you have a cross with a human being on it here. We have images of saints right here. And here you do not have human beings as as an image of primary importance in the worship space itself. Instead, what we see is a lot of geometry. We have some repeated imagery over and over again. And in this case, within the geometry, we see these kind of abstract floral, vegetal or organic designs. And we also see calligraphy in a lot of places. And this calligraphy is right out of the Quran. Arabic calligraphy started evolving after the Quran made its appearance around beginning 610. And the Quran is actually the written word that the Prophet Muhammad received from Gabriel, who spoke to him over a period of about 30 years. And even though the Prophet Muhammad himself never learned to read or write, he told what was commanded to memorize by the angel. He told that to his wife Khadijah, and she wrote it down. And that's where this calligraphy is based in the writings from the Quran that Muhammad's wife Khadijah first wrote down. And what's interesting is that the Arabic writing itself over the years kind of evolved so that there are several different styles of writing, and there's some images that keep repeating. And I want you to look at this right here. You see this kind of curvy W form right here. Can everybody see that? Where I'm kind of circling around with my arrow. Can you guys see this W?
Yeah, I see it.
Right, that is thank you. That is Arabic, and it actually spells out Allah. So when we see that in the calligraphy showing up over and over again, it's then the Arabic pronunciation of the word for God. And so we see this kind of geometry showing up over and over again, but it is distinctly different, even though we see some of the other semiotic similarities, where it's a space for people to gather. There's light coming in. There's a space that kind of directs people's attention while they're praying, not to be praying towards, but there is something for them so that everybody knows the position that they need to face when they pray. One of the big differences is you do not see a focus on representations of human beings in the worship space itself. And that their word for that is aniconism. Some of the things that were very important to Muslims is religiously is the pursuit of knowledge through scientific process. And one that the reason why that is specifically tied to the religion is in Islam, it's believed that all truth comes from the same source, and the way that they express that, particularly in Islam, is through scientific rendering of and process of knowledge. You have been with a meticulous record keeping. You have a thesis that you test, and a lot of that is expressed through geometry and mathematics because it was believed that numbers are going to be the same everywhere and that numbers at their base represent, at least symbolically, truth. Another thing that was very important is the book arts, because uh, books represented the miracle that God granted human beings to record and pass along knowledge. So there, I want you to read through that portion of the module as well. And there's a lot of other stuff that we can talk about, but I would really like you to go through that module and look at the different things. Now, this is an 8-point quiz. Again, you can take the quiz having one page open to the quiz itself, another page open to the module, so you can double check everything. So, and if you miss any points in the quiz, I've gone through all the quizzes, and anybody who has missed points, I've just said, double check these points, double check these questions, and you can retake the quiz as many times as you need to. So, in Islamic art, there are some different things that I wanted to talk about. And in this assignment, what you're going to be writing, and this is very specific. I want you to go through and look at these different things and reflect on the different kinds of imagery that you see. And if anybody has any questions, I am happy to talk about this because this is stuff that I've studied for the last 20, 25 years. And we're not going to listen to the call to prayer, but I want everybody to listen to this. Um, I'm, I, I'm having a hard time when I record YouTube videos for the class that I put back on YouTube. If there's anything that we watch, I get dinged for copyright violation, even though we're not trying to sell anything. But what's interesting about the call to prayer is a lot of people get it confused with music, and it is not music. Um, some people will talk about it in realms of lyricism, or in terms of lyricism and tonal modulation and things like that. I'll go to a different thing here, and I'm going to I'm going to share this tab, and then I'm going to play this, some of the sounds that you can hear this. But again, and I think that it'll be okay because we're just going to be listening to it, but we're just going to listen to it for a couple seconds. And then I want you to go back and listen to this on your own. Oh, I'm sorry about this. Sorry about that. I couldn't adjust the sound, so you had to hear the first 5 seconds of an ad. Okay. So this person who is reciting the call to prayer, it is a recitation. But one of the things you'll notice as we listen to this is it will sound very much like he's singing, and he's not. Um, and I want you to listen to this, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're not. I'm sorry. I'm not going to play any more of that because I don't want to get dinged again on YouTube. This is in your module, and I want you to watch it yourself. It's about 3 minutes long. Now, Idris Islami Azan is a world recognized caller, and one of the principles of Islam, one of the pillars, is daily prayers. And mosques were designed specifically to be shelters for people to come together as a community and pray as a community. And this is the inside of a dome of a mosque. And I'm going to see if I can find some images of some of the mosques that I went to. So I'm going to share this, and you can see some of them. There's a grand entrance, and then you have a rather uh, placid exterior. And then on the inside, you have these domes and these great big open spaces. And the great big open spaces is because people would come here and they would pray as a community. And it was 5 times a day is when you're supposed to pray. And there would be callers that would announce the prayers um, during the time, but they would do it as loud as they possibly could. And it became they used the same kind of vocal resources that opera singers do for some of the same reasons. But this is a recitation. It is different from singing because they're not trying to give you a song. They're trying to project the call to prayer, which is essentially, God is great. Let's gather together and worship him. And that's what they're saying over and over again. And so you get these really big open areas for people to congregate together. And you'll also notice that in a lot of mosques, there is something called a niche where that marks where Mecca is, because people, when they go together to worship and to pray in in a mosque, they are pointing their faces towards the static miracle to remind you that God is aware of your presence as a human being. And that static miracle is the Kaaba in Mecca. So you're praying with your face towards Mecca to remember, to help you remember that God is mindful of us. So you're not praying to an object or a thing or a person or a painting. You're praying to God, but your face is um, directed towards Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. Now I'm just scrolling down here trying to find other pictures of a mosque, see if I can find one of these niches that people pray to, and I think we're kind of close. Let's see. Okay, here. This is the upper part of a niche, right here. Well, no, I'm sorry. This was writing in a niche. It was actually on either side of the niche. The niche itself is just an open area, about the size of 2 chairs next to each other. And this was actually on either side. So if you actually were standing in the niche and facing right, you would see this. Left, you'd see this. And it was basically the architect of the building who was signing it. I'm I'm sorry, I'm not doing a very good job trying to find this. And I thought I had it so I could show it to you easily. Well, one of the reasons why the mosque look like this with broad open space is because the inside is basically an open porch. And the very first mosque, this is just an aside for you to know about. The very first mosques, uh, the very first mosque was actually commissioned by the Prophet Muhammad when he was in Medina. And this is one of the reasons why Muslims gather together to pray on Fridays, is because in Medina, the Prophet was invited there to find a way for the Christians, Jews, and Muslims to all live together peaceably. He knew that Christians needed to worship on Sundays, Jews needed to worship on Saturdays, and their Sabbath was Saturday. And so the Prophet Muhammad built the mosque so that Christians, Jews, and Muslims could all use it in the community. And one of the reasons why Muslims pray on Friday is so that the Christians could use the mosque on Sunday, Jews could use it on Saturday, and then the Muslims would use it on Friday. Anyway, so I want you to go to look at some of these. Uh, I'm sorry, some of these sites and some of these links. The book arts, like you said, were very important because books represent a miracle of transmission of knowledge. But the other reason it's important is that all books on some level become a symbol for the Quran, which is the book that is uh, the recitations of Muhammad that the angel Gabriel had him memorize. So anyway, so talk about these things. When you write your reflection, I want you to um, talk about your reflections on each of these kinds of things. You know, what's going on here with this artwork and stuff. And we talked about semiotics a little bit. Semiotics, again, is contextualization of space, where if you want to understand something, think of it in terms of how is the space used. That's why when we talked at homes, there's an entry space where people are welcomed into the home. You take their coats. There's usually sometimes a guest bathroom. There's a kitchen. There's a living room. And the same kind of thing is true for churches. You have an entryway. You have a place where people gather to worship. Generally, you have a focal point that people direct their attention to towards when they pray. In a mosque, it's to remind you where Mecca is, so you can pray facing the Kaaba, even though your attention is directed to God when you pray. And in Christian churches, there's going to be something to remind you of the reason why you're there to church. You know, a lot of the times it's pictures of saints, might be uh, a cross, it might be a cross with Jesus on it, or it might be a podium uh, where people are given messages to remind them about the importance of behaving correctly. You know, so and it's going to be different for every church, but that's the our appreciation of the context for those meanings. That's where we the semiotics come into play. Okay, so one of the big assignments this so that reflection, when you write your reflection, think about each of those things and respond to each of them in your written reflection. You know, a sentence or two about your thoughts on the call to prayer, sentence or two on the book arts, and sentence or two on the difference between the geometry and abstraction in Islamic art that you saw, as well as compared to the images of saints in some Christian art. Anyway, one of the big assignments is citing your artist resources or your artist sources. Everybody had 5 URLs. And in this, I talk about creating a proper citation. And I want you to read through this. One thing that's important, very important to you or for you, is I'm not expecting you to go to the library and ask for help in writing your citations. A citation is different than a URL. The URL is the link that you click on or what you type in your navigation bar on your computer. The citation is uh, how you present that in a work so that other people can find the same source that you used, regardless of whether or not they have access to a working computer or whether or not the site works well. Now, I walk through this process myself where I include uh, citation, or I'm sorry, I include a URL. Let me show you what this URL takes me to right here. A lot of images that are by an artist named Albrecht Dürer. That is the source that I'm looking at. When you cite this, you're not including, or you're not necessarily including the URL. You don't even have to include the URL. A lot of people do in their citation. But what we're going to be doing is plugging your URLs. So everybody had 5 URLs on the previous assignment about 5 sources about your artist. And on this, you're going to pick 3 of those and show that you can properly cite the source. And you're going to be doing it in MLA format. I say that right there. And this is what the difference is. This is what the URL takes me to. This is the URL is at the top of the page. It is what you type in to go to this page. And then the citation the citation looks like this. See the difference? I've pulled out the author or the subject matter of the citation, the date that it's published, who published it, and then on this, I've included the URL, or I say available at, and at the end of it, I've written the access date. And the access date is really, really important because I don't know if any of you have gone to the Wayback Machine or archive.net, but the internet constantly changes. And sometimes people will revamp their website. And when you say accessed on to this URL, or when you have an access date, then somebody can use one of those archive websites to find exactly what that website looked like on that date. And what I've included, I want to show you some of these that I'm sharing with you guys. This is what Grammarly looks like. And Grammarly, you can set up an account. It is free. I don't. Sometimes you can use it without having to set up an account. If you do need to set up an account, I would say make a throwaway email that you can use, and so that it doesn't track any of your information. But I've given you other alternatives as well. So Grammarly is one, and I'm going to show you another one. I really like Citation Machine because you can use that without setting up an account. And I want to show you what this looks like. And what I have the link for is in MLA style. It will do citations of several different styles, but what I want you to use is MLA style specifically. And I want to show you how to do that. So I'm going to go, we'll pretend this is one of my 5 URLs that I submitted when I said ask for research on your artist. And I'm going to copy the URL in the navigation bar. I'm just hitting copy. Then I'm going to go back to Citation Machine. And I want to double check that it says cited website and MLA. So I'm going to put that website that I just copied right here. Hit a search. Okay, and it shows me a couple different possibilities. This is the website that I visited, so I'm going to ask it to cite that. And it shows me, here's what we found. Now, you're not going to get all the information, and that's fine, but I'm going to say continue. And here's put the information with the article title, who wrote it, shows me all this. I do want to include the URL, so I'm going to say yes, include that. I'm not going to worry about all the material that it's not accessing, but so I'm just going to hit complete citation. Wait a second, and then it gives me the citation right here. And and it says your citation may be missing information. Well, I can tell that it is. We know that it is. It's probably because it is a website stuff. The writer is going to be somebody who works for the museum. And this may be the best that I'm going to be able to get from that website. But it should be enough information. When I include this accessed on phrase, it will give me enough information that I can use that as my citation, and it is in the correct MLA format. The reason why I'm concerned about the amount of information is because 20 years from now, I want somebody to be able to access the same information that I accessed, and doing it in this format is going to ensure that that's the case. Now, the most important things are the first letter here and the accessed on date right there. I want you to remember those, because when you go and put these together, oh, I'm sorry, let's see. When you go and put these together to submit, what you're going to have to do is make sure that your citations are all in alphabetical order. The first letter of the citation, which was the Arbeitur, and everything else comes after that. Then we have the available at, and you sometimes, if you don't want to do the available at, you don't have to. You just put a period at the end of your citation part, do a space, do the URL, and then do a space, a period after that. Make sure that, and then you can do the accessed on. You can do it either as parentheses if there's no period after that, or if you did do a period, you don't have to do the parentheses. There's a bunch of rules like this, or you can just follow this exact format as I have it, which is here's a citation, Arbeitur, National Gallery of Art, just exactly like that website gave me. Then there's a period. It says available at, and here's the URL. And instead of a period after that, there's a space, parentheses, accessed, colon, the date, parentheses, and then the final period. Now, there are several different ways of doing this. This is acceptable. And it doesn't really matter to me that the little variations you have, as long as each of your 3 citations are following the same format. Once you look at this, all 3 of them are following the same format. And notice that they're all in alphabetical order. Now this, and then when you're all done with those 3 citations, I just want you to write a couple sentences about what you did. I used citation machine, but there were some issues for the YouTube video. I added in the publisher and data publication by looking at the video description because that wasn't in the actual YouTube citation that citation machine gave me. So there are different things like that that you can do, and double check your alphabetization. So I know I went through that fairly quickly, but do you guys understand? Do you think you guys understand how you can do this on your own?
Yeah, I think I got it.
Okay. I wanted to show you the 5 citations that I'm referencing that I keep saying those are the neat ones you need to pick 3 from. We go, let's see, we look over here. You do the brainstorming there, right here. So in module 6, see the artist research list of sources. That's where you wrote the URLs. You're going to draw 3 of those 5 URLs, or you're going to pick 3 of those 5 URLs, and that's what you're going to use for the citing your artist research sources. So that's where that comes from. The most common mistakes that people make that they get dinged on is it's not alphabetized, or they don't have the accessed on date, or they don't have the paragraph. So those are the 3 biggest things that people have. If you use citation machine, it's pretty hard to go wrong with this. We just plug it in, then you copy and paste that into the assignment. All right, then the last portion of this module is tessellations. And this image I keep showing people, this kind of thing where you have the image and it's repeated over and over again. This is something that we see a lot in Islamic art. And I'm talking about, this, I've studied this stuff for almost 25 years now. And there's a lot more to it than what I'm sharing with you, but you see these kind of designs that are repeated over and over again. And if we go back here and you see with the photos that I took, you see these designs and they're repeated over and over again. That kind of repeated design is called a tessellation. I think this is a really good example of how this happens, where we get a star, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 10 points to the star. And we see that this is repeated over and over again in different iterations. There are some different things that go on, and you can tell if we took a line that we went through the center of each of these 4 stars right here, then I think you can and then we also went through the center of this and attached that, you get this pie slice that's repeated it over and over again. And this is one of the magical things. Yes, it looks complicated, but if you can imagine a triangle like this that we can flip and repeat over and over again, flip and repeat, that's how we get these designs. So it is a relatively simple structure because it's only one little triangle of shape that we're repeating over and over again, but it starts looking really complicated. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it's a reminder that there's a pattern to everything. And in Islam, just as in Christianity, there is this underlying message that the Creator has a purpose for things. There is a pattern. We may not see what the pattern is, but there is a pattern. Another thing that's important is these little pieces that are repeated over and over again. Yes, this little triangle is small, but it is absolutely vital to the design. If any of these little petals was off, the whole thing would fall apart. If any of these little star shapes was off, the whole thing would fall apart. And that is a message that I really like that is emphasized in Islamic design. It's this idea that we're part of a human beings are created to be part of a pattern. We may not understand what that pattern is. It may seem kind of confusing, but we are not only part of the pattern, we are in each individual is integral to the pattern. It is vital to the pattern. And I think that that is really, really fascinating. And then the third thing that's important is the pattern is repeated and is made into something that is just beautiful and profound because small and simple bits are used and each of them are flipped and turned and moved here and there, but all of them become part of the overall pattern that extends forever. It can be repeated forever. And that's the thing. Yeah. First off, there is a pattern. Second, everybody is an integral element to it. And third, it goes and goes forever. It can go forever. And that's why it gets, yes, it seems to end right here at the corner, but it can be repeated forever beyond that. And that's an idea. It's a reminder that the creator is a being of infinity and that the universe goes on forever. So those three things are integral to Islamic design. And it's all based on a relatively simple geometry. But this kind of repetition is um, that's what is encapsulated in the word tessellation. Tessellation just means repeated geometric design. Now I want everybody to watch this video. We're not going to watch it here, but
Yesterday.
I'm sorry.
Yesterday was amazing. Rachel was determined to live her life on her
I'm sorry.
terms. Not
Get that? Okay. This is a TED Talk, and it is a TED Talk that demonstrates how geometry is created. And so I want you to watch this. Okay, that's not going to help. I'm sorry. Let's see if I can find. I want you to watch this because it talks about the different kinds of geometry and how they are applied. And some things are based on fivefold, sometimes they're based on sixfold, sometimes they're based on eightfold. And this is a nice short video that talks about each of those kinds of iterations. But it starts off with a really simple assumption. And then you can see how it's tessellated out into something that becomes incredibly complicated. So they all start with a circle and a square. So please make sure that you watch this and watch how the person constructs that. And if you guys are interested, I can walk through it with you and show you how to make some of these designs. Anyways, you're not going to be doing any of that. You're not going to be using a compass or a square. You're going to be clicking on this. It's called Tile Maker. And you're going to be coming to this screen. And then what you're going to be doing is developing a shape that you're then going to tessellate. Tessellate means repeat. That's essentially you're repeating a geometric form over and over again. And you're not going to necessarily need to share it like that. But what you are going to be doing is making these forms, tessellating them, and doing a screen capture. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is the grid. When you dismiss that thing that just popped up, this is the grid that you're going to be working with. And you notice that when you can make a circle, and then each of these points, let's see, you can connect them, and it will make more and more circles. And you can also make lines. But notice that one thing that it's doing is these lines are repeated over and over all around. I'm just going to connect a couple things. All right. So I've made something, and you can go back, backtrack, redo this as many times as you want to. That's just fine. But what we're doing is looking at, okay, this is where you tessellate it by hitting this little um, uh, toggle right there. So I'm not ready to do that just yet. What I can hide the points. And what I can do is add color to this somehow. See how we can do that. Right up here, it says color. So we can add color. Let's see, I'm going to add, no, I don't like that. Well, maybe it'll be okay. I'll do another color and add that right here. Like turquoise, I'm going to add that right here. But I want more turquoise, so I'm going to add it right there too. And maybe I'll add it right there. Okay. And then I'm going to get some blue, put some blue right here, put some blue out here. And let's see, I'm going to get some really pale blue. Okay, can everybody see how I've made this now? Can you guys see how I've just
Yeah.
created the thing? Okay. Nicole and Erica, are you guys seeing this too?
Yes.
Okay. So, and so I've hidden the point, and I just want you to play with this. Maybe you don't like the first one, maybe you don't. And then let's say I can say all done. Oh, I don't want to publish it yet. So, because what I want to do is I want to tessellate it. And this is how I am going to be accomplishing the assignment. So by making this bigger or smaller, they're spread out more. But this is the tessellation is to the work area that I was originally in. So if I exit out, I get back here and I can do the shape. Yeah, I want to edit the shape more. Let's see, I want to draw another circle. I can make the circle all the way out to there. And if I do that, then when I get to the tessellation and do that, you can see it tessellates right to the size of that square. So I have all that space to work in. And that square that I'm talking about is, if I go back to the shape thing, see this grid square right there? This is what it tessellates to. And so when I'm all done with everything, adding the color and stuff, and I erased all the colors that I originally added, but I can do that. I'll go to tessellate right here. This is the kind of design that it works with. But you'll need to do 5 of these designs, and each time you get done with one, you're going to do a little screen grab. And what I use is Oh, sorry. What I use is a snipping tool that is free, and then I can just, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I can just grab. Can you guys see me using the snipping tool? Probably not, huh?
No, it's not showing up.
Okay. All right. Let's see if I can. I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can share that. Hold on a sec. Okay. Can you guys see this? The snipping tool?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because that, so I just used a snipping tool. It's on my computer, and I just made a screen grab, or I just cut out a portion of that screen we were looking at, and that's how I got this. So, and if we go back, so you can see I just grabbed a portion out of the middle. And that's basically what you're doing. And you're doing this 5 different times using this website that I share with you guys right here, which is TileMaker. And you just take those 5 images and so that's what you submit them. And now these 5 tessellations, I want to show you what other people have done really quick. So I'm going to, okay. So this is one that somebody's done. And I've got to, let's see. And I'll just show you what this, several others that this person has done. Oops, sorry. And these are just person. Okay, so we've got, this is another one from that same person. This is another one. And each, I just want you to try different ways of making it, try different ways of doing it. This is that they just use lines. And sometimes you could use lines, use lines and circles. Now they didn't do a lot of color experimentation. I want you to try to play around with the color because you have several different shades of green that you can work with, several different shades of each of the colors. Play around and see what you come up with. But you can see just this one person had 5 very different looking tiles or tessellations. And that's what I want you to do. Just experiment with it and come up with 5 different ones. And how long would you say it took me to do that first one that I was showing you?
Less than 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it just takes a couple minutes. So again, oh hey Shaden, you just popped in. Excellent. So again, look at that. Go to this website, and you're doing 5 different tessellations. Then you're going to be toggling when you make it. You're going to be toggling this. And I got to this one after making the design and coloring it. I went to right here to preview. I hit that, and then down at the bottom it says tessellate, and I hit tessellate, and then I used my snipping tool and I snipped an image out of the center of this to get that thing that everybody saw. So you're doing it 5 different times. But I don't want you to don't just do one color like this. Play around with the colors. See what kind of color combinations you can do, and just play with it. And maybe see if, it might even be interesting to see if you can match some of the colors we saw with some of the Islamic art that we saw. But again, like with the kente cloth, you're not we're not going for authenticity here. We're just seeing we're following the directions, playing around with it a bit, and seeing if we can have some fun with it. But it's fantastic to see what this looks like, how it changes when you tessellate. And you can go back and forth and play with the colors. I want to see what happens if I change that color. But I mean, isn't it fascinating how much it changes just by changing the colors a little bit? All right, so that is the world tour Iran, and I was hoping to cover more of the. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was trying to navigate on my computer. I was hoping to cover more of the Impressionism stuff, but what I would like you to do is, uh, go through that, play around with that tessellation stuff, see what you come up with, and just submit the 5 best ones that you make. Now, the other thing I only have about just a few minutes left. We're going to talk about Impressionism, and I think I can get you to the point where you can do the weekly reflection and the quiz, and then next week we'll talk about the painting and stuff like that. Because I'd like you to try the painting, but um, I'm thinking I want to talk a little bit more about it because we did talk quite a bit on about how to do the citations, and I think that is important. That's what you're going to be working on, and then I'm hoping you'll also be getting caught up on other things. Now, the Renaissance happened between about 1350 and 1550, and it established pretty much how we look at art today. It's everything we think we know about art today. A big part of it is in reference to what was learned during the Renaissance, where a lot of different worldviews came together, where realism, particularly realism of the human form, became really important. And that's why so many people explored it. Not because, again, nobody knew how to do it before then, but because it was important to the worldview of the time. That's primarily why. I noticed in some of the reflections, people pointed out that literacy was about 5 to 10%, and that's exactly right. About 1,000 years earlier about 800 years earlier than the Renaissance. So we're talking about 7th, 8th century. Literacy was actually higher in Europe than it was in the Renaissance. Literacy in some areas was up to 20%. And so at Renaissance, that's why it dropped. That's why people were doing a lot of these kind of mural things so that people could be educated and entertained. Now, but if we skip forward about 500 years, Impressionism, this happens in the 19th century, and some really huge things occurred. One is we're talking about this is the Industrial Revolution. This is factories. People are getting introduced to things like trains and moving forward with into cars even by the end of the 19th century. But there are some things that I want you to read through and pick up as you go through this. Go through this. We'll talk about it more next Tuesday. But there are some really amazing things that happened with physics and technology during the 19th century. People are starting to realize the world is not what they expected. The world is getting smaller. By this time, you could travel around the world in 80 days, when beforehand, even 100 years, 50 years earlier, you were taking your life in your hands if you're leaving. That's why so few people actually did it. This is where we get the introduction of photography like we think of it today. Now, photographic processes have existed for a long time. There's a camera obscura that There's a good chance that Plato, what, I'm sorry if you guys saw that, I just scratched my armpit like a monkey. I'm sorry. But and people think that, well, people are pretty sure that Plato and Archimedes both were aware of the camera obscura. So camera technology or optical technology has been around for a very long time. But this is Daguerre, who Louis Daguerre invented the daguerreotype in 1844. Uh, Actually, before then, this image was taken in 1844, but he refused to patent it because he wanted everybody to have access to it. So we get photograph technology, and artists are getting upset because, well, if there's photographs, why do you need art? Subject matter was shifting because of the Industrial Revolution. A lot of people were escaping the feudalist kind of the feudalism worldview, where you have the peasants and you have the ultra wealthy, and you have middle income people, the the mid-level income between the extreme poverty and extreme wealth expands, and this is where people can afford their own homes, but they don't have to be uh, aristocrats. People can afford to travel, people can afford different things, and the subject matter was shifting away from historical narratives, biblical narratives, things like that, to encompass more of what people that ordinary people were interested in. And this was supported because of the travel technology. People were getting goods from Japan and China, and they were seeing images like this that was really refreshing and different. And this started influencing what people were attracted to in Europe. This kind of stuff was showing up more and more often. And this is uh, what's the word? I'm sorry, I'm losing my vocabulary today, and I don't know exactly why. uh, People are getting more realistic scenes, not realism in the form of naturalism, that it is supposed to look like exactly what you see every day, but realism in that the way that the real human being experienced real life. You don't have much that the post historical scenes. You have stuff like bouquets of flowers, people working in the field, ordinary scenes of everyday life. That's the kind of realism we're talking about. Kind of a realism of um, subject matter, I guess is probably the good way. We talked about technology, travel technology, movement. I want you to read some of this because we were talking about um, people could travel uh, on a horseback maybe 18 to 20 miles in a day. And now we're getting machines that can actually move people 20 miles in an hour. And then there's even a quote about uh, talking about somebody's experience going 35 miles an hour on a train for the first time in forever. It's just astounding. And scientists are aware of this, is where we get the birth of particle physics and understanding of particle physics and molecular um, physics, things that are actually made by molecules and diatoms that people can see with microscopes. But this is where people start understanding that eyes are made up of cones and rods, and that we see human eye sees in dots of color. Uh, and that informed, later on, it informed how televisions were made. But this is why when people start painting, instead of smoothly blending the paint like we saw with the Renaissance, people start doing dots or splashes or blots of paint because they are aware that this is how the universe is structured or appears to be structured. And I want you to think about two special innovations in the technology of art. And when we look at the Renaissance, pigment technology was based on this, and then you get little bright spots of bright color. Michelangelo, people thought he was insane because he did love painting in really bright colors, but bright colors didn't seem to be as common all the time. Like, it was kind of phased out after uh, Greek and Roman culture painted all their stuff with really super bright colors simply because of the pigments that artists had access to. In fact, in some of the paintings well, in a lot of the paintings that were commissioned during the Renaissance, in their contracts, customers would request specific percentage of the surface area be done with lapis blue or a bright pink or things like that because they wanted to ensure that color would actually be used. A lot of the times paintings would be done in grayscale and then thin layers of color would be put over it. But I want you to look at this and then look at the colors that were available in the 19th century. Look at that. What do you notice right away? Can anybody see what is a big difference that you notice between Renaissance available pigments and pigments of the 19th century?
Seems like there's more variety of colors.
Yes, and a huge amount of change in variety and also brightness. I mean, you get a lot of earth tones in the Renaissance, and then you get a lot of these bright colors. And a big part of that was because industrialization allowed and travel technology allowed these kind of pigments to be uh, transported and moved into areas of the world that they never had seen them before. And then, oddly enough, the paint tube that we're so used to today only occurred because of industrialization. People were actually able to use soft metals and press them into foil or into very thin sheets of metal that were easily malleable. And then paint colors like this could be put into these tubes and then shipped all around the world so artists didn't have to grind their own colors. Before now, artists used to have to take bladders from animals to store their paints in. And because you're using linseed oil and stuff like that, it would go rancid and nasty after a relatively short amount of time. And since you had to make your own colors, it was very problematic for artists. So this was a very important technology too. Just the fact that you could put paint into a sealable tube, ship it anywhere in the world, and then use it without it going bad immediately. So those two technologies are very important. The expansion of colors of pigment technology, and paint in actual metal tubes. In fact, an early 19th century, an early 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century artist said that the Impressionism could not have even happened without metal tubes of paint. I think that's pretty wild. Anyway, so that gives you enough information so you can write the written reflection and do the quiz, and we'll talk about the studio painting next Tuesday. Because yeah, it looks intimidating, but I will tell you how to do it so everybody can do it and it is not intimidating. Now, if this is due, when is this supposed to be due? July 12th? That's this Sunday. Um, don't worry about it. We'll make this due July 19th. Okay. So I will change these due dates. As soon as we're off today, I will change these due dates. So don't stress about it. All right. That's everything I wanted to cover. I'm sorry we went over a couple minutes. Does anybody have any questions for me? I know we stormed through that really, really rapidly. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I don't have any now, but if I do, I'll reach out to you.
Okay, that's great. Erica, do you have any questions?
No,
Okay. How about Nicole?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. And Shaden, you joined a little bit at the tail end. Do you have any questions from the stuff that we looked at? Oh, okay. Your speaker isn't working, but no questions. Okay, good. No questions. Excellent. All right. So for this week, do your best. Go through as much of that stuff as you can. Watch the videos, read through all the modules. That will help you as you write your reflections for the Iranian art or the art from Iran and or Persia. I think I may change that to Persia in the module. I probably not for this semester, but for next semester. And that should give you enough to do the quizzes and get your 3 citations done, then do the tessellations, and then read and watch the module stuff for Impressionism. And then next Tuesday, that's when we'll talk about the painting, the Impressionist painting you're going to do, and we will talk brief about the next module as well. And again, I will change the dates, the due dates as well when we get off. So, all right, if there's no more questions, thank you guys. Thanks for not blowing things up over getting hurt over 4th of July. Take care of yourselves, and I will look forward to seeing you guys next week. I hope you have a wonderful week and weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll see you
you.
guys.